In the city of Jerusalem, long ago, there lived a little girl named Hannah. Hannah was the kind of child who noticed everything. She noticed the way the wind curled dust along the road, the way doves tucked their heads beneath their wings at sunset, and the way grown-ups looked at one another when they thought children were not paying attention. And lately, the grown-ups had been looking at each other a lot. The city was crowded that week. Travelers had come from many places. The streets were full of footsteps and voices and the smell of bread baking in warm ovens. Donkeys clopped over the stones. Merchants called out from their stalls. Children ran between baskets of figs and dates. Everything felt busy, bright, and expectant, as if the whole city were waiting for something. Hannah stood on tiptoe beside her mother in the marketplace. "Why is everyone talking about the teacher from Galilee?" she asked. Her mother adjusted the basket on her arm. "Because many people believe he is someone very special." "The one called Jesus?" Her mother nodded. "Yes, the one who heals the sick, welcomes children, and speaks about God as though he knows him very closely." Hannah's eyes widened. She had heard whispers about Jesus before. She had heard that he had made blind people see, that he had eaten with lonely people, that he told stories about mustard seeds and sheep and fathers who ran to meet their children. She had heard that people listened when he spoke, not only because of his words, but because of the kindness in them. "Do you think we'll see him?" Hannah asked. Her mother smiled. "Perhaps." That afternoon, the city began to stir in a different way. A murmur rolled down the street like the first rumble of distant thunder. "He's coming! Jesus is coming!" People moved quickly now, gathering near the road. Some climbed onto walls. Some waved branches cut from palm trees. Others spread cloaks on the ground. Hannah clutched her mother's hand and hurried with the crowd until they found a place near the edge of the road. Then she saw him. Not on a tall war horse, not behind shining soldiers, not dressed like a king from a storybook. He was riding a small donkey. Hannah blinked. "That's him?" she whispered. Her mother nodded softly. "That's him." Jesus rode slowly through the cheering crowd, calm and gentle, as though he were listening to every voice and seeing every face. People shouted Hosanna and waved their branches high. The leaves flashed green in the sunlight. Children laughed and called out too, their voices bright with excitement. Hannah had expected someone grand and glittering. Instead, she saw someone peaceful, someone who looked as though he belonged among ordinary people. As Jesus passed, a little boy beside Hannah stumbled and dropped his palm branch into the road. Before Hannah could help, the donkey paused. Jesus leaned down, picked up the branch, and handed it back with a smile. The little boy stared, open-mouthed. Jesus smiled at Hannah too as he passed. And though it lasted only a second, she felt as if a warm light had brushed across her heart. That evening, while the sky turned pink and gold, Hannah sat on the roof of her house with her father. Below them, Jerusalem buzzed softly in the fading light. "Why were people shouting Hosanna?" Hannah asked. Her father leaned back on his hands. "It means something like save us or help us. The people are hoping Jesus will make things right." "Will he?" Her father was quiet for a moment. "I think he came to do exactly that," he said, "though perhaps not in the way people expect." Hannah thought about the donkey, the branches, and the smile Jesus had given the little boy. She did not understand everything her father meant, but she knew this. There had been no pride in Jesus' face, no meanness, no hunger for attention, only gentleness. And somehow that felt stronger. Over the next few days, Hannah heard more and more about Jesus. Some said he was teaching in the temple. Some said he was telling stories again. Some said he spoke about love and forgiveness and a kingdom that could not be built with bricks or gold. One afternoon, Hannah and her mother went near the temple courts, and there, above the noise of the city, she heard his voice. She could not catch every word, but she heard enough. She heard him say that loving God mattered more than showy religion. She heard him say that loving your neighbor mattered too. She heard him speak kindly to people others ignored. And when a group of children gathered near, hoping to hear him better, he did not wave them away. He welcomed them. Hannah squeezed closer through the crowd until she could see him clearly. He looked tired, as though the week had been long already. But when he spoke to the children, his face softened. A little girl with tangled hair held out a daisy with a broken stem. Jesus accepted it as though it were treasure. That night she lay in bed thinking, if a king came, maybe this is what he would be like. Maybe a real king would not need to be loud. But the next day, the feeling in the city changed. It was still crowded, still noisy, but now the voices sounded sharper, nervous, quick. People whispered in corners. Sandaled feet hurried over the stone roads. Doors closed sooner in the evening. At supper, Hannah noticed her parents speaking in low voices. "What happened?" she asked. Her mother looked at her father, then back at Hannah. "Some leaders are angry with Jesus." "Why?" "Because he tells the truth," her father said gently, "and not everyone likes to hear the truth." That answer did not seem fair to Hannah. Later that same evening, while lamps flickered in the house, her father told them something else he had heard. "Jesus shared a special supper with his closest friends tonight," he said. "And do you know what he did?" Hannah shook her head. "He washed their feet." She frowned. "But that is servant's work." "Yes," said her father. "Why would he do that?" Her father's eyes were sad and thoughtful. "To show them what love looks like." Hannah sat very still. A king on a donkey, a teacher who welcomed children, a man who washed the feet of his friends. Everything about Jesus seemed upside down from the stories people usually told about powerful men, and yet somehow more right. That night the wind outside seemed restless. Hannah woke once in the darkness and heard voices in the street. Not cheerful voices, urgent ones. She went to her window and saw torchlight moving like orange stars through the dark. In the morning, her mother's face was pale. "They took Jesus away in the night," she said softly. Hannah stared. "Soldiers." "Why?" Her mother knelt beside her. "Because some people were afraid of him, and some were angry." Hannah's throat tightened. "But he didn't do anything bad." "I know," her mother whispered. The city that day felt wrong. The sky seemed too bright for the sadness in people's faces. Everywhere Hannah looked, she saw worried eyes, pressed lips, trembling hands. She stayed close to her mother as they made their way through crowded streets. People were whispering, crying, arguing. Some looked afraid to speak at all. Then Hannah heard someone say, "They are taking him to the hill." Her mother tried to turn them away, but Hannah caught a glimpse. She saw Jesus walking, bruised and weary, carrying the heavy wood of a cross. She saw people shouting. She saw others weeping. She saw his friends standing helpless and broken-hearted. And though she did not understand all that was happening, she understood enough to know that something terribly wrong was being done to someone deeply good. Her mother gathered Hannah close and covered her eyes before they went any nearer. They did not stay long, but the sorrow of that day seemed to settle over the whole city. By afternoon, the wind had changed. The light had dimmed. Even the birds seemed quiet. At home, Hannah sat by the doorway with her knees tucked to her chest. "Why didn't he stop them?" she asked in a small voice. Her father sat beside her. "Because Jesus chose love, even when it cost him everything." Hannah looked up, confused and tearful. "But if he loved people, why would people hurt him?" Her father exhaled slowly. "Sometimes people do not understand goodness when it stands in front of them. Sometimes fear makes people cruel. But love is still love, even when the world is hard." Hannah blinked quickly. She wanted a better answer than that. She wanted the story to change. She wanted someone to say it had all been a mistake and that Jesus was safe. But no one said that. When evening came, her mother lit the lamp, though the room still felt dim. "Where is he now?" Hannah whispered. "In a tomb," her mother said. A stone was rolled across the entrance. A tomb, a stone. The words felt cold and heavy. That night Hannah did not sleep easily. The city that had once felt full of singing and possibility now seemed covered in silence. The next day was quieter than any day Hannah could remember. No excited crowds, no joyful shouting, no stories traveling through the streets. It felt as though Jerusalem itself was holding its breath. Hannah wandered into the courtyard and sat beneath the small olive tree there. A white flower had blown down from somewhere and landed near her sandal. She picked it up and turned it in her fingers. Everything felt finished. She thought of the broken stem daisy Jesus had accepted from the little girl. She thought of the donkey, the palm branches, the foot washing, the kindness in his face. How could someone like that be gone? Her mother joined her beneath the tree. Hannah leaned against her shoulder. It feels like the light went away. Her mother wrapped an arm around her. Sometimes it feels that way before morning. Hannah looked at the flower in her hand. "Do you still believe what Father said, that Jesus came to make things right?" Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Yes, even now." "How?" "I do not fully know yet," she admitted, "but I know this. Goodness like his does not disappear just because the world is cruel. And love like his is stronger than we can see." Hannah wished she could believe it as easily as her mother did. But all she could think about was the stone in front of the tomb. Big, sealed, final. Very early the next morning, before the sun had risen, Hannah woke to movement in the house. A few women were preparing to go out. Among them was her Aunt Miriam, carrying folded cloth and small jars of spices. "Where are you going?" Hannah whispered. "To the garden tomb," her aunt said gently. "We are going to honor Jesus." Hannah's heart squeezed. "Can I come?" Her mother hesitated, then nodded. "Stay close." The streets were cool and dim as they walked through the gray edge of dawn. The city that had seemed so loud all week was now hushed. Only their footsteps and the soft rustle of robes could be heard. A robin began to sing from somewhere in the trees. Then another bird answered. They reached the garden just as the sky began to pale. Hannah saw the tomb ahead between the olive trees. Then the women stopped. One of them gasped. The stone was moved. Hannah stared so hard her eyes watered. It could not be. The great stone that had seemed so final, so certain, was no longer blocking the entrance. The women hurried forward and Hannah followed, clutching her mother's hand. Inside, it was empty. The place where Jesus had been laid was empty. For one strange, silent moment, no one spoke. Hannah felt the world tilt. Had someone taken him? Had they gone to the wrong place? Then a voice, bright and clear as morning light, filled the garden. "Do not be afraid." Hannah turned. There, near the tomb, stood a figure in shining white. Not harshly bright, not frightening, but radiant, like sunlight on fresh water. The women drew in sharp breaths. "He is not here," the messenger said. "He has risen." The words seemed too wondrous to understand all at once. Risen, alive. Hannah looked from the empty tomb to her mother's astonished face. Alive? The robin kept singing. The sky kept brightening. The olive leaves trembled in the breeze. And suddenly, the garden did not feel like a place of endings anymore. It felt like the very beginning of something. One of the women, Mary Magdalene, ran from the garden at once, her face full of tears and joy and disbelief all at the same time. Others hurried after her to tell the disciples. Hannah remained for a moment, rooted to the spot. She looked at the empty tomb again. The stone was still there, rolled aside, but now It no longer seemed heavy. It seemed defeated. As the first edge of the sun rose above the city, light spilled into the garden. Warm gold touched the branches. Warm gold touched the path. Warm gold touched Hannah's face. And for the first time since that dark Friday, she felt it. Hope. Not small hope like hoping for rain or seed cakes or a festival day. Big hope, the kind that feels strong enough to reach into the saddest places and say, "This is not the end." Later that day, the city filled again with voices, but this time they were different. Not fearful whispers, joyful ones, wild, astonished ones. People were saying Jesus was alive, that death had not kept him, that sorrow had not won, that love had done exactly what love promised it could do. Hannah ran through the courtyard at home, laughing and crying at once. Her father lifted her off the ground and spun her in a circle. Her mother covered her mouth with both hands, tears shining in her eyes. "It's true," Hannah said breathlessly. "The tomb was empty. The stone was gone. Morning came back." Her father set her down and knelt in front of her. "Yes," he said, smiling through tears. "Morning came back." That evening, Hannah sat again on the roof beneath a sky full of stars. But now the world felt different. The city was still the same city. The stones were still the same stones. The olive trees still bent in the same wind. And yet everything had changed. Because if Jesus truly lived, if love had truly defeated death, if hope had truly walked out of the tomb at sunrise, then maybe the darkest night was never really stronger than the light after all. Hannah held a small white flower in her hand, the kind she had found in the courtyard the day before. Only now it looked different to her. Not sad, new. She thought of all the things she would remember when spring returned each year. Blossoms opening after winter, birds singing before dawn, gardens waking, and the first warm sunlight falling across the world. And she would remember this too, that Easter was not only about a day. It was about love that did not give up, hope that did not stay buried, and the promise that after sorrow, joy could still rise again. Far below, someone in the street began to sing. Another voice joined in. Then another. Hannah smiled into the night. At the beginning of the week, she had seen Jesus riding humbly into the city on a donkey. At the end of the week, she had seen that same city touched by the greatest surprise the world had ever known. A stone had rolled away, a tomb had stood empty, and hope had bloomed in the morning light. From that day on, whenever Hannah saw spring flowers pushing up through the soil, she thought of Easter. And whenever she saw the sunrise pouring gold across the sky, she remembered the garden. The quiet, the empty tomb, the shining messenger, the sound of birds waking, the first light of morning. And deep in her heart, she always remembered what Easter meant. That love is stronger than fear, that kindness is never wasted, and that even after the darkest night, hope can rise again.